2% on this, 15% a family member, 42% friend or friend of the family, 14% some combination of A, B, and C, and 28% down here with nobody that you knew lost their job. One of the characteristics of the downturn that began in December 2007 is that unemployment was widespread. So the fact that we have only 28% of people in the room who knew somebody who didn't know someone who lost a job, there we go, turn it around. The fact that we have 72% of people in the room, that's better. The fact that we have 72% of us in the room who know people who lost their jobs in that downturn, that's one of the measures that this was a really big thing, that this was a really great, as they call it, a great recession, because it affected so many, many, many people. So let's look at unemployment and definitions of unemployment. What we're building toward is to build an explanation, that is to say a model, a story that explains what happens with unemployment. All right, so unemployed. Oh, I didn't check my animations this morning. Here we go. Pictures. Classic picture from the 1930s of unemployed standing in a line in the 1930s. Oh, I do have animations. Okay. Another classic picture of the 1930s of unemployed standing in a line, probably in New York. Who knows? More classic pictures. These are the classic Great Depression kind of pictures you see in History 7B, I think. But here's a line of people who are standing in a line trying to get jobs. Those are folks who are unemployed. My lights are not there. If you are looking for work, so you're at some sort of job center looking for work, you're going online to Craigslist or whatever, looking for work, that's unemployed. Here's people again. These are people in line looking for work. So unemployed, to be counted as unemployed, means two things have to be true. One, the individual has to be out of work. So to be unemployed, you have to have no job. You're not unemployed if you don't like your job. So unemployed is people who are out of work, and it's an and statement, not an or statement, and they have done something in the last 4 weeks to look for work. So to be counted as unemployed, you're out of work and you've done something in the last 4 weeks to look for work. Now, that something can be looking at ads. In the old days, we did it in the newspaper. Nowadays, you do it online. It could be somebody saying, hire me. If you're just standing there at the street corner, you know, the people in the median strip with the sign, if you're just standing in the median strip with a sign that says hire me, I don't think that's going to count as looking for work, right? So it has to be, you've looked up ads on Craigslist, you've submitted a resume, you've put an application in someplace. There has to be something that you've done that is part of looking for work. So if you've done something in the last 4 weeks to look for work and you don't currently have a job, you're counted as unemployed. If you're looking for a job but you already have a job, you're counted as employed. So whether you have a job or don't have a job is the first key question. To get the answers to these questions, the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls up about 65,000 households in the United States and surveys those households on a monthly basis. Call them up, ask them a series of questions about the members of the household. Who's the first person in the household? Does that person have a job? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then the question is, why do they not have a job? So they were laid off, they were fired, they just got out of school, they're a homemaker, they're retired. And then there's a series of questions to discern whether or not that individual has done anything in the last 4 weeks to look for work. In your stats classes, you learn this sort of statistical principles. A sample of 65,000 is sufficient to get some pretty good numbers for the economy as a whole. Even though we've got 317 or so million people in the United States, if we survey 65,000 households, we don't have to survey all 317 million to get some good numbers on unemployment. Those numbers are published every 4 weeks. You're going to look at those numbers in section in the exercise that you're doing, and remember that we need to have at least one tablet or laptop per group in section today and tomorrow. All right, so here's a picture that looks at the unemployment rate from 1900 to 2014. One of the things you're going to be doing in section is looking to see how does the story of today change if we change the starting point of this graph. Right? So I'm an economic historian. I very deliberately started this graph in 1900 so that we can see today in a very, very long run perspective. When we look at today in a very long run perspective, going back to 1900, I don't know about you, but what jumps out at me when I look at this graph is the 1930s. So during the 1930s, the unemployment rate in the 1930s hit a maximum of about 25%. In March of 1933, the unemployment rate was about 25%, and then the unemployment rate started to come down. But notice that the unemployment rate stays above 20%. You can't really tell here how late, but the unemployment rate stays above or near 20% through the mid to late 1930s. So it's a recovery, but it's a really slow recovery, and we still had certainly well over 10% of the population out of work and the labor force out of work and looking for work. So that's the first thing that always jumps out at me. The second thing is that during the war, there's a second piece. Corresponding to the fact that we were producing above trend, we had an astoundingly low unemployment rate. The unemployment rate during World War II was down around 2%, 1.8, 1.9, 2%. So extraordinarily, unsustainably low unemployment rate during World War II. So when we look at this 114 years worth of data, at least for me, maybe because I like to study the 1930s, that's the first thing that always jumps out at me when I look at this picture. The second thing that jumps out at me when I look at this picture is that if I were to draw some sort of a trend line, let me do it with a thick line. There. If I were to draw some sort of a trend line, I would say that over that period of, say, 1950 or so to 1980, early 1980s, we had an upward trend in what was happening to unemployment. It went up and it went down, but it wasn't really coming back. And you look here, 1900 to 1930, and if you tried to find some sort of trend there, it's not really much of a trend line. It sort of was bouncing around 4.5%. Go below it, go above it, but it would come back. Instead, in the United States, after World War II, we had this upward trend in the unemployment rate. So there was this long-term movement towards higher and higher unemployment rates, so that when the economy went into recovery and the unemployment rate started to come back down, here we are in the 1970s and the early 1980s, having these really bad recessions where the unemployment rate goes up above 8 and all the way up to above 10% in the 1980s. And when it came back down, it didn't get back down to the sweet spot that people considered the 1960s to be, when the unemployment rate had been on the order of 4.5%. The other thing that I noticed when I look at this long-run picture is that upward trend from 1960 or so to 1980 or so seemed to reverse itself from 1980 or so, 83, 84, until about 2007, that we had this downward sloping trend in terms of what was happening with the unemployment rate, that we kept seeing lower and lower and lower unemployment rates, which meant there were fewer and fewer people who were out of work and looking for work relative to the economy. And then, of course, the third thing, or fourth, I don't know what number I'm on, that jumps out at us is the more recent experience of the recession that began in December 2007. The unemployment rate peaked again at about 10%, same place where it had peaked in the 1982-83 downturn, and is coming down. The unemployment rate now is 5.9%. We're not back down to where it was when the recession began, just before the recession began in December 2007. In 2006, 2007, the unemployment rate was give or take 4.7%. So it was like 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.7, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, something along those lines. Question? No? Okay, so we're not back to that baseline. We're not back to a 4.7% unemployment rate, but the unemployment rate has certainly come down from the peak levels that we saw in early 2007 and in the early part of the recession, December 2007 to January of 2009. Clicker question. The unemployment rate today this is a quick recall question. There is a correct answer. A, the highest it's been since the 30s. B, lower than it was before December 2007. C, coming down but still above where it started in 2007. D, as high as it was in 2008 2009. Or E, none of the above. A, B, C, D, or E, if you would. 3 seconds. 1, 2, and 3. Whoops. Oh, my happy face is kind of, draw bigger eyes. Is that one kind of weird? It's like the dots, so just draw bigger eyes. My happy face was kind of doing one of those weird things there. So the unemployment rate is coming down. It's at 5.9%. That's above where it was when we started in December 2007. So when the recession began, the unemployment rate had been 4.7% in 2005, 6, and 7. We're not back at that level yet, so B is the wrong answer. It's coming down, but it's still above where it was when we started. Okay. Third main topic of macroeconomics is inflation. Third main topic we look at is inflation. When we talk about inflation, we're trying to measure the average price. So we're going to come up with one number that measures the average of prices of things like groceries and financial services. I don't know what else is in here. Your utility bills are in there, so what you pay for electricity and gas and water. Buying a new computer, the price of buying a new computer would be part of it. Buying food from a food truck. Averaging together all of those various goods and services and coming up with one number. Oops, what did I have? I have more pictures. I didn't know I had more pictures. And coming up with one number that measures the average price that's paid for all that variety of goods and services. When we do that, when we come up with that one number, and then we look at how that number changes over time, we get this chart of the inflation rate again, economic historian at the front of the room. I'm going to start the data nice and early, so we've got 114 years worth of data here. So there's the inflation rate starting in 1900, running through today. Zero, the black line there would be zero. That would mean prices and thereby wages and incomes would be the same in one year as they were in the previous year. Anything above the zero line means that prices and wages and income are higher in the subsequent year than they were the year before. Anything below the zero line means that prices and wages and incomes were lower in one year than they had been previously. I don't know about you, but here's what I see when I see this thing. First, what I notice is it used to be pretty common to get substantial periods when prices fell. So here we are, 1907, 1920, 21, 1924, 1929, 30, 31, late 1930s, late 1940s, and then we didn't have any period when we were below that zero line, except for a little boop, 1955-ish or so, and a little boop in 2009. So it was pretty common in the first, say, 40 years of the 20th century for the United States economy to experience prices and wages falling. But since, let's say, since basically World War II, it has been very uncommon to see prices and wages and incomes falling. Second thing that jumps out at me are the periods when we had really high inflation, when the prices were a whole lot more one year than they had been the year before. So we had pretty strong inflation here associated with World War I. We had pretty strong inflation here associated with World War II. We had pretty strong inflation here in the 1960s. That's kind of related to the Vietnam War, late 1960s. And then the 1970s, these two peaks here, the 1970s peaks are not related to war. These two peaks are related to oil prices. So we had big inflation from World War I. We had big inflation from World War II. We had some inflation here from the Vietnam War. And then we had big inflation in the mid-70s and the late 70s associated with big peaks in oil prices. Great article. I thought that I always think the articles I tweet to you are great. But one of the great articles I tweeted, I thought, was the one I sent out this morning about what's the shutdown price for oil refineries, and are we nearing the shutdown price? All right. So definitions. Oh wait, was I done looking at the picture? No, I wasn't done looking at the picture. Whoops, sorry, my bad. The third thing, one was deflation, the other was the inflation. The third thing that I noticed when I look at this is how relatively stable prices have been over the last, say, 30 years. The fact that the rate at which prices have gone up has stayed basically around 2 to 3% over the last 10, 20, 30 years. They call it the Great Moderation. It's a pretty amazing thing. So that's that, particularly in that 115-year period, that's an astounding level of stability of what's happening to prices. And then today, here we are. We've got an inflation rate today of a little bit below 2%. Same sort of thing. All right, some definitions. One is the price level. So when we do these definitions, I'm going to use an uppercase P. We do care now. Macroeconomists don't use lowercase letters. That's just all there is to it. Macroeconomists use uppercase letters. You know, there you go. By and large, there'll be some exceptions. There's exceptions to every rule. But by and large, macroeconomists use uppercase letters. That price level is one number that is the average price for all those goods and services that we're buying. G and S is my shorthand for goods and services. G and S stands for goods and services. It's too many words to write out, so I use just G and S, goods and services. I even have a little thing in my, what do you call it? My computer is set up so that I can type G and S and it pops in as goods and services in emails, in Facebook, in my Word documents. G and S, goods and services. All right, and we're going to use the letter P to stand for that. Inflation. There's inflation in the economy if the rate of change, so the percentage change in that average price, the percentage change in price, if that value is positive, we say there's inflation. So if prices are higher in year 2 than they were in year 1, which means the percentage change in P is greater than 0, we call that inflation. Stagflation is a word that combines the words stagnation and inflation. So stagnation and inflation, stagflation, means that the rate of change of output, the total amount of goods and services being produced in the economy, is really low, which means that the unemployment rate is pretty high and perhaps climbing, and there's inflation. So stagflation is when we've got two problems at once. We've got a stagnating economy, which means either the output in the economy is growing really slowly, or it's declining, which is even worse, which means the unemployment rate is relatively high, and there's an inflation problem. That's called stagflation. Disinflation is a word you don't hear very often, but macroeconomists use it. Disinflation means that there is inflation, so the percentage change in prices is greater than 0. There is inflation, but the inflation rate is coming down over time. So there is inflation, and or but, whichever word you want, and that inflation rate is falling over time. So if the inflation rate was 5% in year 1 and 3% in year 2, we would call that disinflation, because there's still inflation. Prices are still going up, but they're not going up as rapidly, and so it's called disinflation when the inflation rate is decreasing over time. Hyperinflation is when there's a really, really big inflation rate. So when the inflation rate is really, 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 really big, we call it hyperinflation. There are a few definitions out there. Some people say it's greater than 20% per month, not per year, but per month. Other people say it's greater than 50% per month. Doesn't matter. Either way, it's humongous. So the joke about, I guess it's a joke, the thing that John Maynard Keynes, who was a famous economist that we'll talk more about, said in the 1920s during the German hyperinflation was that the price of beer was going up so rapidly in the 1920s that you wanted to order 2 beers at a time. Because even though the second beer would get a little bit flat before you started to drink it, the price of it would have gone up so much between ordering the first beer and the second beer that it was worth it to buy 2 beers at the same time, even though the second beer was going to be a little flatter by the time you drank it than the first. That's hyperinflation. Prices going through the roof in a crazy way. Deflation is when the rate of change of prices over time is negative. So when prices are lower in year 2 than they were in year 1. A lot of people think, oh, that sounds good. Remember that what happens to prices is also what happens to wages. So remember that the wages people are paid reflects not only their productivity, but also the prices of the output they're selling. So that when prices are going down, wages, that is to say incomes are going down as well. And so deflation doesn't wind up being very pretty after all. Deflation. All right, some clicker questions. Fuel prices are going up. Not actually accurate. Fuel prices are going down, but stick with me here. Fuel prices are going up. Computer and electronics prices are going down. What do those two bits of information tell you about the inflation rate? A, those things balance out, so the inflation rate is 0. B, inflation is rising. C, that there is inflation. D, that inflation is declining. Or E, those two bits of information tell me almost nothing. 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. That's only 2 of the many, many, many things that we buy. That's only 2 of them. I've got more questions. I don't know why you guys are packing up, because it's also, I've still got like 2 minutes, and you know I use them all. That's only 2 of the many, many things that we buy, and so it really doesn't give us very much information. So only knowing what happens in 1 or 2 markets tells us nothing, because that average price level, that uppercase P that we're looking at to calculate inflation rates, includes all of the goods and services that we buy. Okay, next clicker question. Today, the U.S. economy is experiencing A, recession, B, recovery, C, stagflation, D, hyperinflation, E, I don't know. And there's one more clicker question after this. 3 seconds. 1, 2, and 3. Good. All right, 86%. Get the happy face. We're not in recession. Output is no longer declining. It's rising. Unemployment is coming down. We're certainly not in stagflation. Unemployment is coming down. That's a good thing. And the inflation rate is less than 2%, and we're way not in hyperinflation. One more. What do you think that most people care about? We've got these 3 topics: long-run economic growth, unemployment, inflation. What do you think that most people care about or think about or react to today? The unemployment rate, the inflation rate, the rate at which output is growing, so the long-run economic growth, unemployment and inflation both, or inflation and output growth both? 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, and let me show you the picture. There we go. So we've got 60% here and 30% here. We are going to talk a lot about unemployment. Goodbye. I'm not sure why you're so antsy to get out of here today, but there you go. You think there's internet outside, huh? Ha, 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 ha. Good luck with that.